I think business is the best force for good that exists. You know, especially in a business like ours, we're able to change the lives of our customers and help our customers change the lives of our employees, make a great profit, and from that profit, give to nonprofits, set up the future of my family, so change the lineage of my family tree. Business is the best vehicle that exists to change the world. And I think those are the unique skill sets that I've been given as an operator and a CEO and entrepreneur. And so I just want to max out those talents and have a lot of fun doing it.
Today on the show, we have Chandler Bolt. We talk about what it was like to be a self-published author at the age of 19 and how he transitioned from not just authoring his own book to now helping hundreds of people author their own books. We dive into what Cowboy Up means for his theme in 2025 and even what getting his own pilot's license looks like. You're going to enjoy this episode. Theme of your year. So do you always set a theme every year?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least for the last few.
And this year's Cowboy Up. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Gosh, dude, you're freaking on it. You've done your research. Cowboy Up to me, so I've got another graphic of that. You may have seen me post about it. I mean, there's a few meanings. I'll pull it up. You can kind of you can see it. There's the image. So there's Cowboy Up, and then there's kind of the sub points. So I think the big one, it's a few things. It's getting back to my southern roots. I grew up in South Carolina, living in Texas. Now Texas is home. So there's kind of, I just went to the rodeo last night with my wife. And so it's getting back to my southern roots, but really it is being bold. I feel like the past few years or the past couple years, I've just been playing scared and, drop out of school and started the business. And when you do that, you've got nothing to lose. It's like, it doesn't get any worse from here. So I got nothing to lose. Who cares? Bet the farm. But then somewhere along the way, you make it. And then you just start playing not to lose. Because it's like, okay, the business is cranking. It's growing every year. It's spitting off a ton of cash. How do I make sure I don't screw this up? Yeah. So I think I just got into that preservation mode a bit. And then last year we had our first down year ever. This month will be a decade in business. And I kind of realized in reflecting on that, before then it was just, hey, it's just going to grow. Yeah. It's not, is it going to grow? It's by how much is it going to grow this year? Then last year we were slightly down, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I just kind of took inventory and said, hey, I got into a scarcity mode. We had to make some cuts and trim down and all that stuff because our profitability wasn't where we wanted it to be. But I think I got consumed with that, and I made that the main thing. Yeah. You can't cut your way to growth, obviously. Right. It's very important, very, very critical. A lot of people ignore it. But so in doing that, I realized I was playing scared, and I got way into scarcity. And so this year it's, hey, I want to be bold, which is kind of a sub point of that. Like, hey, I want to be bold. I want to claim new land. So like we're opening our new office next week. That's part of it. I plan on doing some significant real estate investing. So it's like, all right, that's part of it. Claiming new land. There's teach, train, and encourage, which that was the part that I kind of had to kind of shove in there. It's not fully on brand with the cowboy thing, but it just, I want to, create a lot more content. I want to teach my team and beyond through the content. I want to encourage people, kind of get back to that natural encouragement.
What's interesting though is like in the cowboy theme, like I wasn't a rancher before we bought this ranch, but what I've learned from the ranching is all of the ranching community is all about teaching and training. Like if you call somebody and say, hey, like we have a sick cow right now. Yeah. And I like called a bunch of my friends, like I got a sick cow. What should I do? They are all there immediately to be like, when I had this, I did this. When I had this, I did this. Like it's a community that is always teaching and training each other. Like it's a very, very connected community that's very tied to like, how do we serve each other? Like we're all working on the land. We're all working with these animals. How can I help you? So I think it's more tied to the Cowboy Up theme than you probably give it credit for.
That's a great point and great insight from somebody who's actually doing it.
you got to learn how to tie a barbed wire fence. Somebody's got to teach you, right? You got to learn what to do with the water tank. Someone's got to teach you.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
It's like mentorship or apprenticeship. It's funny, at the end of the year when I was kind of dialing in on this theme, I started doing research around cowboys. And it's like, there's grit, there's perseverance, there's self-reliance, there's boldness a lot of these folks are going into untamed land or unclaimed land.
So when we branded our first set of cattle in December. I'd never done anything like it, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, it's way harder than you think. Like you would think you just put them in a squeeze chute. It doesn't. They're wild animals that don't want to be burned with a hot iron. Like, logically. But when we brand, we'll probably brand again in the next 2 months. You got to come out and do it. Like there's nothing like Cowboy Up besides like put a hat on, get some boots on, and we'll brand some animals.
I like that. That's really fun.
Yeah.
I'm in for that. And so I think, sorry, this is a really long answer, but maybe just land the plane. The last two components for me are tame the chaos, which I just realized that you've probably experienced this. As the business gets bigger, you just have way more problems.
Yes.
And at a certain point, you start to think, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm just screwing this up because I've got more problems. And then one day I just realized, oh no, it's just the law of large numbers. Yes. I actually have the same amount of problems proportionately, but because the business is bigger, there's way more of them.
Yes.
So I feel like I'm always failing.
Yeah.
You know, if we've got 50 or 60 employees, well, let's say you have a 10% churn in a year. Well, that means you're losing 6 people at a minimum a year. So that's one every other month.
Yeah.
But when you're 10 people, it's like if you lose one person every other month, you're like, oh my gosh, everything's, the sky's falling, whatever. So there's tame the chaos, which is just, hey, it's going to happen.
Right.
And so you can either resist it or you can ride it and tame it. And then the last piece for me is growing the flock. And so that means building out the Austin HQ, hiring a bunch here and building out the team here. So there's the flock in that way. There's also getting pregnant with baby Bolt. So that's on the radar for this year, stuff like that. And then the very last piece is just kind of a fun nod. I'm a big Connor Price and Forrest Frank fan.
Yeah.
And, they've got this song called Up.
Yeah.
And so I was down, but now I'm up. So it just felt like so fitting this year is like, all right, we were down last year, but now we're up and we're going all in and we're going to be bold and we're going to grow like crazy.
What did you learn from the down, though? Because there's so many lessons to be gained on the down. On the up, everything is good. Whatever you touch goes to gold. Life is easy. What lessons did you learn last year from the down?
Growth hides a lot of sins, right?
Yes.
I think what I learned on the down is a bunch of things. You find out who your friends are. Not many people have the vision, and it is your job to show the vision. Yeah. And so I think I lost a person or two on my team that we hired last year that all they saw was the down because it's all they experienced. And so in their mind, they did not think it was going to get any better. And, and when people, without vision, the people perish. When people lose hope, they leave. And so I think there was some of that of realizing, hey, this is my job as the vision keeper for this organization to paint vision and show people a brighter future. I think also one thing I learned is we needed to make cuts. And I think logically I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to just like kind of chip away at this throughout the year. And so that I'm not rocking the boat too much. But it was actually the exact opposite. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. And so I just prolonged the cuts throughout the year. And then people were like, oh my gosh, like we just had a year of losing people. Yeah. And it's like, no, like the plan was to trim down the team this year and we just did it over 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. Which is way harder for you too, because it's emotionally it's not easy to fire people.
Totally.
Like, I don't care who you are. I mean, even say what you want about him, but even Donald Trump has to have some remorse when he says the words "you're fired." Like it's a human. You're messing with a human, and I've been guilty of the same thing, which is like, okay, we got to make some cuts. Let's one this month, couple months, let's do another. And in reality, like it creates this like toxic negative energy around the company because, like to your point, everybody sees like, okay, who's on the chopping block now? Versus like, hey guys, the team that's here now is the team that's going to stay. The team that got cut. Bless them. They got to go do their other thing. That's fine. And so like that's, I think, an incredible lesson for a lot of people to take, which is that, when you have to make hard decisions, do them all quickly.
Yes.
It doesn't get easier.
I needed you to tell me that about a year ago.
I don't think I knew it a year ago either.
I think, and you said you got to make hard decisions. I think that would be, I could list 7 to 10 other things that I learned, but I think maybe the last one I would just share is choose your hard. You mentioned making hard decisions, and that's just one big thing I realized is you can either have hard now or you can have hard later. Yeah. And so often we choose the hard later button because it's easier. And I think last year I just chose the hard later button maybe at the beginning of the year, but as the year kind of started to conclude, I started choosing the hard now button again and again and again. And it got pretty demoralizing, honestly, because then you're just facing the consequences of that. But I do not regret that.
Yeah, you have to. You have to make those decisions. Like you said, growth covers a lot of sins. And when you're growing, it's very easy for people to hide. It's very easy for expenses to hide and you not pay attention to that stuff. But, in those downs, there's so many lessons for us to learn that if you can capture those, will make the next growth and the next cycle even more powerful for you.
I agree. I hope so. And I think that's going to come this year. And I think we're already starting to see some of that is when you strip things down, it's like pruning a tree.
Yeah.
You prune and then new growth happens.
Yeah.
And more growth happens because you pruned. So
the way you get to the life you desire is by getting in rooms you don't think you deserve to be into. And this is an opportunity for you to get into a room that most oftentimes in the year you will not have the ability to get into. The Austin Entrepreneurial Summit powered by GoBundance is the only time we open the doors of GoBundance to the public. This event is packed with some powerful speakers and incredible people from the GoBundance community that will pour into you on your journey of success and help you achieve the life you desire. Service is the Trojan horse to knowledge, and if you want the opportunity to take your life to the next level, do yourself a service and sign up for this event. See you in Austin in May. You drop out of school. How the heck do you publish a book, self-publish a book, co-author and self-publish a book, and then say, okay, hey, I'm going to take this and spin this into a 10-figure business?
Yeah. When I was dropping it, so I ran businesses in high school and college. So there were multiple businesses. And then in college, I worked for a company called Student Painters. And for those who don't know, internship, they teach you how to run a business by running a house painting company. And so they give you a zip code, some training, and some marketing materials and say, get after it. And so I ran that business my freshman year. And in that year, I was number one in the company and number one in the country out of everybody. And then my second year, I came back and I trained 3 guys to run their businesses, and they all made like the rewards trip. So that gave me the confidence to say, all right, hey, I'm learning more from actually running businesses than I am going to class and learning from professors who have never ran businesses. This doesn't make any sense. Why am I here anymore? So I dropped out, and then I wanted to write. It just organically came about, and it wasn't this big grand plan of a book. It was, hey, let me put together this PDF for my friends who want to start businesses, but they're more entrepreneurs. Let me speak to that. And then I wrote a couple books. That was one of them. And then it evolved into a book. Hey, hold up. Let's publish this on Amazon. And then the book started making thousands of dollars a month and paid the bills when I dropped out of school. And so from that those books had some success, drop out. And as I'm dropping out, and then people started asking, hey, how are you doing this? And so I just hop on a call with them for, an hour and say, hey, here, do this. Here's what I learned about this. Here's everything I can teach in 60 minutes. Good luck. Hope this helps. And just for free, just to be a nice person. And then it's one of those things where, somebody can only smack you in the face so many times before you turn around and look. And you turn around and look, and there's a whole line of people. And I was working on a business that was failing at the time. And then meanwhile, people kept asking about this thing, right? And I would just earmark that for people listening or watching is if you're struggling to get a business off the ground, what's the thing that people are actually asking you about?
Yeah.
And you're probably ignoring it. You're not thinking about it. Or maybe like me, you're just, hey, let me hop on a call with you and tell you all this stuff. Okay, that's where the demand is.
Yeah.
And so finally we launched what was at the time called Best-Selling Book System. And we had our first cohort of 44 people go through that program. We sold it, then built. So that's another lesson I learned from a mentor of mine. He was all about pre-selling and validation. So that was the mistake I made with my first business that I didn't make with this. So we sold it and then we built it. And we were very transparent. Yeah. Hey, we've done this successfully. We're going to teach other people how to do it. And if you join as part of this first cohort, you'll get the best pricing, the best support, all that.
But we've never done this.
Yeah, exactly. We've never done it
for ourselves, but we haven't built a business.
But we're going to teach you exactly what you want. So you don't have to worry about this not being for you, because it's going to be literally built for you.
And now you guys are publishing 2 books a day.
Yeah, so exactly. So fast forward all the way. I mean, that first cohort, 60% of them published a book, I want to say in 6 months.
Wow.
Which is just nuts out of that group. And so, and then now fast forward to today, we've done about 70 million over the last decade. We've published thousands of books, been on the Inc. 5000 list a bunch of years, Forbes 30 under 30, all kinds of stuff. And to your point, we're publishing about 2 to 5 books a day now, and just kind of in scale mode.
What's the end goal? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal with it all?
Yeah, I mean, the big goal is to publish 100,000 books by 2035. Wow. So over the next decade, get to 100,000 books. I think I can get this business to probably about 100 million a year, maybe a little bigger. But the ultimate thing is, I believe I'm going to run a $1 billion company that changes the world and that exists long after I'm off this earth. And this is a step in that direction. Maybe this company will get there. I don't know that it will, just the addressable market and all that stuff. But that, I feel like I have God-given talents and abilities in the area of business. I think business is the best force for good that exists. Yeah. You know, especially in a business like ours, we're able to change the lives of our customers and help our customers change the lives of our employees, make a great profit, and from that profit, give to nonprofits, set up the future of my family, so change the lineage of my family tree, and just like do a lot of great things, invest and all that. So it's just like business is the best vehicle that exists to change the world. And I think those are the unique skill sets that I've been given as an operator and a CEO and entrepreneur. And so I just want to max out those talents and have a lot of fun doing it.
And even like with all the success you've had for so many authors that have published with you, there's still haters online that are like, he's a scam, this is a scam, this is bullshit. Like, how do you deal with that? You just kind of let it roll off your back?
Oh, it's hard, man. It's hard. I think I remember my first 1-star review on a book. And I remember, I want to say I was in Europe with my family, or Australia, or on a trip with my family. Might have been on tour with my brother. And I remember I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this 1-star review on the book. And so it was my first book, and it's a short book, and it's a thin book. It's on productivity for entrepreneurs. So our thesis was, hey, if you're reading a book on productivity, you probably don't have time. So let's make the book short. And and somebody said in this 1-star review, they said, it's a shame the book wasn't bigger. It's not even big enough to use as a doorstop. So it's totally worthless. I was just devastated. And I show my brother this, and he's an entrepreneur as well, but he's also in the music industry. He's very successful in the music world. And I'm like, dude, this is devastating. You see this review? And he just kind of took me aside and he said, Chandler, good news. I deal with this all the time. Got great news for you. This is a review on your book, not on Chandler Bolt as a person.
Yeah.
So this is not this in a way has nothing to do with you.
Right.
And sure, it has something to do with you, but it's not you.
Right.
So your identity should not be tied up in the reviews on your book. Same way my identity shouldn't be tied up in the reviews on the business and stuff like that. And so I think early on, you get those 1-star reviews, you figure out, you just realize how you got to roll it off. And then I think over time, I mean, we've just have an overwhelming bank of evidence of just making authors very, 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 very successful. And in doing that, it's kind of like if you don't have haters, you're probably not doing big enough things.
Right.
And I think Dan Kennedy says, if you're not upsetting someone before lunchtime every day, you're probably not marketing hard enough. Like, I think it's just intellectually understanding that the law of large numbers and big goals is there's going to be pissed off people there, and you learn from it. You make the product better. You make the everything better, but you don't dwell on it. And I actually think that's another big thing that lesson that I learned last year. Back to your previous question, I've been focusing on this with the team. I think when you're in the downs, it's easy to focus on what's not going well. And I just realized it is my job to constantly focus on what is going well teach, train, and encourage.
Yeah.
Right. And constantly look for the wins. And I have a mentor that he used to always ask me this question. Anytime you don't like something in your business, he says, what about your leadership led to this result? And so I looked around one day and I'm like, man, why is everyone so negative? Like we get 10 positive reviews. We get 1 negative or semi-negative review. That's all anybody's thinking about, talking about. And they're like, oh my gosh, our product sucks. Like, all this stuff is like, guys, just look at these 50 positive reviews.
Right.
But the loudest voice often wins. And so then to go back to my mentor's question though, I just had to ask, what about my leadership led to this result? Oh, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And so as a result of me doing that, everybody else around me is. And so I think you just learn to say, hey, what can we learn from the negative stuff? But we're not going to dwell on it.
Yeah, it's fascinating because the people that you're leading on a daily basis follow you. And it's very similar to the way that players on a team follow a coach. And I know you're a diehard Clemson fan. I know you were at the game when Texas won.
Yeah.
I know you've had some time to get one-on-one attention with Dabo Sweeney, who's an incredible leader, an incredible visionary. And like when you think about all of these examples, football teams have down years, and football teams have struggling games, and football teams lose. But his leadership always shows up to continue to persevere, to continue to strive, to continue to go more. So as you've built a relationship with him and that community, what have you learned from those kinds of conversations?
Oh my gosh, so much. I've got, just files of notes of just having dinner with him and asking him a ton of questions. It's funny when I took my brother. So I've done this thing twice with the Clemson football team where basically you go in on a Friday afternoon and from lunch on Friday through Saturday after the game, you're with the team the entire time.
Wow. It's like in the locker room, everything?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
You're going through walkthroughs. You're going to lunch. You're going to dinner. We're in the players only and player and coach only meetings at night.
Wow.
We're going to the movies, and you're sitting next to Dabo at the team movie. We're riding the bus.
Wow.
We're staying at the hotel. We're eating breakfast with them. We're riding the bus to the venue, like on the sideline. It is one of the most insane experiences ever. And so I did it last year, and I took my dad. That was an incredible experience and just a life. That's a core memory with him, especially. And I did this year and took my brother. And it's funny, when we were there this year, I was saying, hey, and he's like, oh, you're the guy who has to call the good questions. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, buckle up for dinner tonight. Like they're coming. Yeah. Because when I'm coming in there, I've got a list of questions about leadership, about culture, about recruiting, about how do you do all this stuff. So I've learned so much from him. I think the big thing, coming back to the theme of what we just talked about, is I've got this sign on my desk, says it's his quote. And so it's him with this quote, and it says, to be an overachiever, you have to be an overbeliever. And just that is his superpower. He is an infectious encourager. And no matter how bad things get, how everyone is down and out on the program, whatever, he's talking about all the amazing things that are happening. And so just like the ability to pour into people, to build belief, to teach, train, and encourage, to tame the chaos, to be bold, to make, in a way, the ultimate cowboy. I've learned more about leadership from him than probably just about anyone else. And I think one of the other things I learned from him is I remember he was a wide receivers coach. So you may know this, but a lot of people think, and I'm pretty sure it's true, but like the core thesis for Ted Lasso is based off of Dabo.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He has this sign in every meeting that says believe.
Wow.
Right? And so, the core thesis of Ted Lasso is the guy gets, put in this position he has no business being in. That was Dabo. Yeah. He was the wide receiver coach, and then he got promoted to head coach. Had never had any coordinator experience, never had any head coach experience, anything. And everyone in the Clemson fan base, myself included, it's just like, this is the stupidest move ever. Like, but that was kind of where we were at as a program. It's like, we suck.
Yeah.
So I guess we're promoting the wide receiver coach.
Yeah.
But when he got promoted, he had a whole thick binder on how he was going to run a program.
Wow.
And it just reminds me of the Les Brown quote that I love, where he says, it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared.
Yeah.
And my parents always talked about growing up this concept of bloom where you're planted. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, it doesn't matter if you're a street sweeper or you're sweeping the office building, be the best sweeper that ever existed, and people will notice.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I know you had Hal Elrod on the show as well. That is an example of that, right? How I met Hal is I was volunteering at mastermind talks. And how I even got that was my hustle when I dropped out of school, because I couldn't afford to go to these conferences. I would just hit up the conference organizer and say, hey, I'll sweep the floors, I'll run the mics, I'll pick the speakers up from the airport, whatever you need, I'm there. And so Jason said yes. And then I went all out. It would be very easy to be like, all right, cool, I got the volunteer free ticket. Like, let me just do as little work as possible and try to get in every session I can so that I can learn and meet people, right? I said, no, I'm going to go all out. So I remember it was either that one or another event that I volunteered at. Like, they say running the mics, I was running. Yeah. And people started noticing. They're like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And so, and almost in a weird affiliation, like, oh, I'm kind of like viewed as Jason's right-hand guy at that singular event because I'm with him, right? I'm on the team. And so now those people want to come talk to me. And so I remember meeting Hal, and then we met up for lunch or dinner or something. And I said, hey man, you got an event coming up. Let me volunteer at that.
Yeah.
And then I volunteered at that event. And then me and all the volunteers and John Berghoff and those guys, I was doing this bit backstage where we were going to give away these 5-minute planners. I started doing the Oprah bit where it's like, you get a school, everyone gets humpback whales.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing this thing, we're all cracking up, and John or Hal or somebody was like, hey, you want to do that on stage when we give away these 5-minute planners? I'm like, yes, I'm in. And so I go do it, and the place goes nuts. And it just brought the house down. And then, afterwards, a few months later or something, I talked to Hal, and he's like, hey, why don't you come speak at the event? You're doing this book stuff. Everybody's always asking me about book stuff. Why don't you come speak? And then, over the years, he has sent us more customers than I think maybe anyone. How would I have met him? I would not have met him without volunteering at that event, right? So bloom where you're planted.
Yeah, what I love about your story and that is, like, I have a similar story, right? Like, I volunteered at the GoBundance events, literally same kind of thing, picking up the speakers, making sure dinner was on time, running the mics, the AV's not working, let's fix it, let's troubleshoot it, making sure the owners had everything they needed. And it gave me an opportunity to be in rooms I didn't deserve to be in. And I couldn't have paid to get in, I couldn't have fought my way into, but I could serve my way into. And so I tell people all the time, service is the Trojan horse to knowledge. If you want to learn something, serve someone that's doing it, and they will serve you endlessly. And like Hal, right? You serve Hal, you go to his event, you get on stage, you do all these things. Hal has now served you in ways you never thought were possible because you served him in ways that he didn't think was possible.
Right.
And so what I love about that is, like, you have no ego, you have no pride. It's just humble servant leadership. How can I serve? How can I help? How can I be of value? And it sounds like what you guys are doing with your company is the same thing. How can we serve our customers at the highest level? Mm-hmm. And it pays off because then they refer endlessly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's so funny even thinking about it. We would not have met if it wasn't for that.
Correct.
Because how I met David Osborne was through Hal Elrod.
Yep.
And then this is getting pretty meta, but I meet David Osborne through that. And when I'm thinking about moving to Austin, I think Hal or somebody else is like, hey, go meet up with David Osborne. And then that dude just serving straight out of the gate. I met him up for coffee, and he's walking me through the history of Austin real estate and all this stuff. And the next thing I know, he's like, hey, man, you want to go on a tour?
Yeah.
It's like, just hop in my Tesla.
Yeah.
And so we're driving around Austin. We're looking at all his houses, and he's showing me all these areas of Austin. And I just left that being like, oh, my gosh, that is one of the more successful people I've ever met. And the dude just added more value to me than anyone in terms of moving to he introduced me to my realtor, like all this stuff. And just a great example of, hey, none of that would have ever happened if I didn't volunteer at that first event. But then the circle of life.
Yeah.
How do you think he got there?
But the other thing is you have a reputation for doing. So there's a lot of people that have similar opportunities that then don't do anything with it.
Right.
You served at the event and then you did what Hal told you to do. You went on the real estate tour with David, then you're like, okay, great. I understand. I want to be on the lake in Westlake. I'm going to do what you said I'm going to do. And so now you've become a person where when people pour into you, you're actually going to take action on it, which means people want to pour into you even more.
Right. And I think that's a cheat code for people watching or listening to this is I think the cheat code to getting great mentors and being someone that people want to mentor is my boss used to always say, listen and do it.
That's it.
He's like, hey, you're going to want to reinvent the wheel. Listen and do it. And so I think the best thing that you can do is become people's biggest student.
Yes.
And so I try to just go to people who I know that I can learn from them, tell them I appreciate learning from them, go implement it, and then continually check back in, but then also, and say, hey, I read that book.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what I learned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I'm sitting down with David or whatever, he's recommending a book. I text him when I finish the book.
Right.
And say, oh, by the way, do you have any other books that you recommend on this topic that I know he's really smart on that I want to learn on, right?
Yeah.
And then also, when someone teaches me something, I give them credit pretty much forever.
Yeah.
And I constantly refer back to them because then guess what? Yeah, they want to send me opportunities. They want to keep pouring into and investing in me like you mentioned.
Right. Yeah, they'll continue to serve you. I mean, I remember when I first had my assistant working for me, we went to one of my speeches and I was on stage at the end of the speech and somebody asked me like, oh, how can we get in touch with you? And I'm on stage, there's like 300 people. I'm like, here's my cell phone number. And I get off the stage and she's like, why would you do that? I'm like, because 99% of them will never call me. So I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. And like, it's true. Even the person I gave my number to never did anything with it. Never called, never reached out, right? Because we all have this fear of like, oh, if I reach out, I'll look stupid or this won't work or this. If you don't reach out, you're guaranteed to look stupid. You're guaranteed to not have the success. Like if you didn't volunteer at Mastermind Talks, you were guaranteed to probably never meet Hal Elrod.
Yep.
Maybe you would have met him in another circle, but you wouldn't have been at his event volunteering. You wouldn't have been on stage that then led to you speaking. That's now led to referrals. Like do what the world is telling you to do. And most people choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
So as people want to publish a book, how do they find you? How do they reach out to you? How do they say, okay, I want to learn how to publish a book. I want to do it easily. I want to self-publish and I want to make sure I have accountability to get this shit done.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, our goal, we take people either from idea to publish, or some people don't even have an idea, or some people say, hey, I've got a finished manuscript. Like, how do I actually publish this and use it to grow my business? And so our goal is we've got curriculum, we've got coaching, and we've got a bunch of services that kind of come alongside that. They keep all the rights and royalties in the process. And so that's kind of how we help people. 2 resources that might be helpful for people. One is a copy of my book published. I'll give it for free to anyone listening or watching. You can go to publishedbook.com/audio. So publishedbook.com/audio. If you want a free copy of my book, it's basically the blueprint. I'm an idiot, or else I would have a physical copy here right now. It's like the only time I don't have one. But then, and also you can get it on for free on Spotify or whatever. But then if people want to get in touch with my team, go to selfpublishing.com/apply. Book a call with the team. We'll walk you through, hey, what are your goals? How can we help? All that good stuff.
Thanks so much for being here, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.